This is the Quality Coaching Roadshow with Anne-Marie Charrett and Margaret Deneen. We chat with people from all over the world to better understand what quality means to them and how to drive a quality mindset. What are you waiting for? Let's get this show on the road. I've got Tim O'Brien from Wargaming with me. Tim is the quality lead at Wargaming, and welcome, Tim. Love to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Anne-Marie. It's great to be here, remote these days.
Doing our social distance is we have put the virtual ruler out, and we are the appropriate distance apart.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So I guess a little bit about myself.
Yeah, sure. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about the organisation where you work and what makes it a unique place for you?
Sure. So I guess Wargaming, we make video games, in particular a game called World of Tanks. We have something like 90 million players worldwide. We actually are quite popular in the Russian region and sort of the Eastern European region. The studio that I work for was originally actually a studio called Big World. And we made the technology that makes World of Tanks work. So we make the game engine for them. And historically, we sort of have provided services to other wargaming studios around the world. Generally sort of around games tech. So usually quite low-level stuff.
Oh, cool! Because the last person we had was in banking, so this is totally different, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just curious: are your systems, are your engines being a bit stress tested at the moment with everyone at home? Are you noticing any difference?
Well, we actually have. Funny you mentioned. We actually have the world record for the most amount of players online on one server at one time. It's a Guinness World Record of 190,000 players.
Wow.
Yeah. And we also in our clusters we had, I think it was, I'm not sure what year it was, but we had 1.1 million players concurrent in our cluster at one time. So I think we're okay.
Holy moly! Were you at the time a bit nervous? Or were you quietly confident that that your systems could handle the pressure?
I think quite confident. I think we are in our server tech and our systems. It's sort of been battle proven for quite some time now. So
awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. So tell us a bit about, what is the structure, your tech stack? What do you work on?
Well, in our studio in Wargaming, we actually classify our teams into sort of games, tech, and services. So something like games, I'm talking sort of like gameplay, making a player be able to, shoot a gun or something like that. Tech would be more the underlying stuff, so making sure that graphics are displayed on the screen correctly and that players are able to log into a server, that sort of thing. And service is more like a team has requested us to provide a particular service for a period of time. And
just the team structure. So what size teams do you work with normally, Tim?
Well, we have 8 product teams. Mm-hmm. Each of them is around from about 5 to anywhere from 5 to 10 members. We have a quality specialist in each team, just one at this point. So there's 8 of those, and we have 100 people in development in the studio currently.
Okay, so you've got roughly between one quality specialist, sort of between 10 people or give or take, yeah. And how do they work? What's their typical testing strategy? What's your sort of vision for them?
Well, each of the teams are at a very different stage of testing. Some teams are quite advanced and they actually have pretty mature processes around quality coaching, for example. Some of the teams mature. They have sort of more of a tester type role where someone's actually doing the testing. We're sort of moving towards sort of shifted agile testing for each of the teams. That's probably our first next step to make sure that everyone's up to that sort of maturity. And we'll progress each team as needs be. But our ultimate goal is to have everyone over to some sort of quality coaching type role.
Okay, so that's the overall vision. And what's your role in all of this?
So I guess my role is kind of part practice lead, part sort of quality manager, people manager type sort of role, and with some sort of strategic role to play in terms of getting these teams into a more mature state in terms of quality.
Shifted agile testing, what's that?
Oh, sorry, is it? So, well, you got shift left. Now, of course, there's shift right as well.
Yes.
So, into production. So, I just sort of decided to call it shifted agile testing.
Nice. So this is like the Tim new phrase, you heard it first. The idea is that you both can go either left or right. You just shift anywhere but here.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess we have a bit of a unique history where we had, games is historically quite waterfall-esque. So teams are, because we were shipping a packaged product as like a one-shot type thing, you would create a game, it would take years to do, you would test it all at the end with a big test team and ship it. But nowadays games are very much games as a service, and the games that we make is very much games as a service. So historically we've had a team that was sort of used to doing big testing at the end, and we're sort of trying to get into more of an agile testing, sprint cadence test type model.
Oh, that's interesting, because I guess just thinking about my idea of what a typical gamer or people working in the gaming industry, they're very quite proud of their heritage a bit. It's like gaming is special. Am I wrong?
A little bit. I think people are. It's as an outside observer, it's like the cool software to get into, the cool software testing to get into. But it's kind of like anything. If you do it for 8 hours a day, every day you play a game, the same game every day, it can get a bit mundane.
I think about the traditional gamer tester tends to be someone who's come from a gaming background.
Definitely. A lot of the testers at our testers at Wargaming Sydney have sort of come from game design or some sort of game development background. And it was basically, because the industry is very small in Sydney as well, it's like a good way to get into the industry.
Just thinking about that skill set and having that passion for gaming, it must be like amazing to be able to do that sort of exploratory type testing. But I guess things like maybe a bit more technical, diving deep, are they different challenges that come up with you? Or do you find that actually testing is pretty much testing no matter whether I get someone who comes from a sort of traditional testing background versus a gaming background?
I think at the end of the day, software testing is software testing. You still need to apply the same framework to the product in the same way. So, you have your test strategy, you have planning, so on and so forth, monitoring, control, and reporting. It's all basically the same thing.
Right.
It applies to applies to games or to web development or whatever.
I think that pretty much people get that idea of fast feedback and trying to do the testing in a shorter time. And naturally, that's moved into greater emphasis on test automation. For you, has that been the same?
Well, test automation is great, but it's kind of quite a challenge for game development because a lot of it's very qualitative. So it's like, is this game fun? It's like, how do you automate that? And it's such a crucial thing for games. Yeah, sure, we definitely want to, make sure that, the game doesn't crash, but which is what automation is great for catching. But those qualitative questions are extremely important. In fact, some of the best games can be kind of buggy and a bit crashy, but people just love them because they're just so fun to play.
Do you test for appeal?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is why I think games have actually held on to the big test teams for quite a long time, because you have a large test team playing the game and they're able to give you that qualitative feedback all the time. And I think that is why these test teams are sort of still around a lot for game development.
So this must be a big thing then, like getting a team that sort of has this historical background and this tradition of testing together as a team and taking it and splitting these people into individual teams and looking at quality coaching.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky and it's also kind of doubly tricky for us because we're shipping to games teams, and then they're shipping to customers for a lot of these things that we're developing. So that makes it a bit tricky for us. I guess because we've also dealt with tech and delivering tech to customers, for us, the qualitative question hasn't been quite as important as other studios. So I think for us, it was a bit of an easier transition than maybe a more customer-facing studio may have encountered.
I guess for you it's a bit easier, but still you've got that cultural aspect that's traditional in gaming, so you still have to deal with that. And sometimes it is that culture that's the hardest thing to work with, isn't it? Trying to change a culture is, it's that classic phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and like it's hard when there's a culture that's set in one way to kind of help shift that. Which is that something that you've had to work a lot on?
I think luckily for us in our particular studio, we have a really sort of agile mindset, agile culture, really. I think because we started out as a fairly small studio, as kind of scrappy, as I would probably describe it, and we built up. We didn't really start out as like, okay, we're just going to build a big studio and we're going to develop games there. It wasn't something that just came out of nothing. It started from a more startup-ish like culture, I guess. So I think that's really helped us.
So what are the things that you've been working on from the quality coaching perspective?
From the quality coaching perspective, we sort of took the Atlassian model and we sort of adapted it to our processes and our teams. And I don't think it's suitable for every team necessarily the way it is. One adaptation that we've added is that we actually really heavily use mind maps as a template, as a guide, rather than like cards or anything like that. And we have all our test planning and test strategy and test reporting and everything within that mind map.
Nice.
For each feature. At least this is with the teams that are fully sort of quality assistants. Mm-hmm. And we even have like the part of the test reporting is like the test story. So everything's sort of self-contained. So we just create a mind map and everybody collaborates and jumps into that and starts adding risks and thinking of potential and developing models and stuff like that.
Oh, interesting. So you do that as a team?
It's usually driven by a feature owner who owns that feature and will predominantly answer most of the sort of questions in there.
So you'll have the quality specialist will own the mind map and then we'll go to the feature owner and get them to fill that in. Is that how it works?
Yeah, basically, except it's actually the feature owner that creates the mind map.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so why do you do that? Tell us more.
Why do we do that? I guess it's about the whole ownership thing. So it's not really owned by the person doing it unless they also set it up in the first place. I guess I didn't really think about it too much. Just sort of made sense. But
I think this is a really interesting aspect because I've been a test lead and I've worked as a test manager and I've worked in lots and lots of different roles within testing. I have a lot of experience and I feel sometimes when I look at stuff and I go, yeah, that's just common sense. It sort of comes naturally, but I'm not sure that everyone feels that way. And I wonder things that maybe an experienced lead or someone who has had a lot of experience doing different types of roles will just naturally lean to doing something like that. But other people don't necessarily have that depth of experience to pull on, or maybe the confidence to actually go, how about we just try this?
I tend to agree. It's just sometimes just like, I just did it because I thought it made sense, yeah.
It ties in totally with the quality ownership, as you said. And if you think about what actually helps people get motivated, ownership is an invaluable part of that story.
Definitely. I think having actually, filled in this template and basically coming up with